Hey everybody, so this is my third and final LSD trip report. It is by far the most significant one. It threw me into a 4-month-long depression. I had to get on antidepressants to get me out of it. It gave me my first panic attack, which I'd never experienced before. It induced that and brought it on, and it basically took me straight into a severe existential crisis that took me a long time to get out of. And I've never felt the kind of pain and despair and hopelessness that I felt after this trip. It did a real number on me and scared me to death and was the cause of so much suffering for me. And so all of it is not to deter someone from taking psychedelics and exploring these amazing tools into your consciousness and using them as a method of improving your health and your well-being, but I certainly want people to understand that you are not guaranteed to have a good experience. In fact, the experience may put you in a very, very bad place. I legitimately thought that I was on the border of a psychotic break in the months following this trip. It was really, really bad. However, having spent enough time afterwards integrating the trip, I'm grateful for it. It ended up, despite how bad it was, it ended up being potentially one of the most positive things to ever happen to me. Not in the moment, but over time as I learned from it, and it sent me down this path of self-discovery and searching for bigger answers to bigger questions and trying to understand our place in the universe and that kind of thing. So all that is to say, also, this trip is the reason that I started this channel, to really track a lot of my journey, and hopefully it's helpful to someone out there. So I just finished up doing 40 minutes recording on this trip, and I just thought this is way too long. I've got to make it more dense. So I'll try to go through it as quickly as possible. You may see me glance down at my notes, but I'm going to try to blast through and get this into a digestible amount of time. So let me just jump right in. I made the error of not having a good set and setting for this trip. I intentionally set out on this trip to help me with some issues that I was having. I was really depressed, didn't know my place in the world. I was at this job that I hated. I was on a low from a previous high. My previous high, I had was a great experience, actually. I worked for maybe the coolest company in the world as a salesperson. They sell electric cars, and I just loved it. Not only that, but I was pretty remarkably successful within that role at this awesome company, and I thought that my future was going to just be amazing from there on out, and my career was going to be just this fantastic thing, and I would have plenty of money, and I would just have a place. And that all came crashing down. The company had some financial issues. They weren't profitable. They laid off entire divisions, and mine was one of them. All that being said, I was really full of bitterness and resentment and fear about the future, and probably wasn't in the best headspace going into the trip. I took 300 micrograms. I chose a setting that was out in nature, which is classically very good, but it was a little bit busier than I would have liked, so there were people around. And then my biggest mistake is that I didn't tell my wife that I was going to be dropping acid that day. I told her that I was going to go out in nature, take a day off from work, and try to get my thoughts together, but I didn't tell her that I'd be dropping acid. I didn't want to worry her. So I'd actually been on my way to work, and I just was in such a bad place. I thought, I need a personal day, and I left. So I was in formal wear. I had nice shoes on, nice pants, nice shirt, and that was also a mistake. So I went out to this place that I really like. Has a little bit darker memories for me now because of this trip, but there's a lot of nature. It's super beautiful. There's a creek that runs down, and there's lots of paths to walk on and that kind of a thing. So I dropped 300 micrograms. I went out there. I started walking on this path, and the come up, I don't enjoy the body load. The come up was pretty hard, and people were like walking their dogs, and they were in shorts and running shoes. They were wearing stuff that was appropriate on a trail, and I'm getting my nice shoes muddy, and I look like I just came from the office, and so I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable because I know they're staring at me and thinking this guy's out of place. He looks kind of depressed, and he's in formal wear. What's this weirdo doing out here? So that wasn't good, but I kind of was able to get past some of that. I was walking down the road and starting to peak, and I went over this bridge, and there was a creek down below, and I wouldn't say that it's the most beautiful creek you've ever seen, but in that moment it was so stunning and so beautiful, I couldn't believe it. And I just thought, man, this is what life is about. We should be able to see the inherent beauty in nature all the time. And I just kind of had that classic amazement at how gorgeous this scene was. I kept walking and kind of had a negative turn of events right after that. Another negative turn of events. I am totally tripping out, obviously, and just staring at nature and really enjoying that. But I'm walking along the side of a road and next to the creek, which runs along the side of the road, and I see this yellow flower. And of course, as you can get when you're totally high, I just got fixated on this flower. It's the most beautiful yellow flower I've ever seen, with the red center, and just there's dewdrops on it, and oh my god, it's incredible. So I'm just staring at this thing, and I lose all of my sense of time. I don't know how long I've been looking at it, and then out of the corner of my eye, I notice there is a car about maybe 30 feet away from me that had just stopped in the middle of the street. The brake lights are on, and I'm like, oh my god, these people are just staring at me, and they're probably thinking there's some hooligan drug addict walking around our streets high out of his mind. And I'm just staring there. I'm sitting there looking at the flower. I obviously look super suspicious and whatever. So that gave me this really dark feeling. I was like, oh, what if they call the cops and they come out and find out I'm high or whatever. So I decide, I put this big smile on my face, and I kind of walk behind them and flash this big grin in the hopes that they'll see that and think, okay, this guy's just out having a good time. He's no threat. We'll just leave him alone. And I think that worked because they drove away. And so that was relief, but I was pretty unsettled from that point. So I'm looking for a place along the creek where I can be alone and just sit there with my thoughts and enjoy the rest of this trip. So I start walking. I have to pass all these construction guys, and I get stuck in this negative thought loop, which is that whenever we meet someone, we're always assessing them up and down for their level of threat to us. And I just hated that feeling. It's like people will probably always take from you if they can get away with it. And so there's this subconscious thing that happens every time you see someone where you assess their threat level, and it's constant. And so I was really drawn to that and focused on that, and it was super negative. And I just thought, we're all selfish monkeys, and there's no altruism in the world, and more cynical thoughts. But anyways, I get past these guys, and I get to actually this really great spot by the creek. There is an overhang, an embankment, and down below that there are all these really smooth, gorgeous pebbles, a little bit of sand. The sun is shining, and the creek's going there, and I don't think I'm visible to anyone. So I sit down, and the sun just feels incredible. It's like it's the first time I've ever felt the sun on my skin before. It was just this amazing feeling, the warmth, and oh God, it just felt so good. I'm also listening to this music. Previously, in my other 2 trips, I'd listened to music, and I hadn't really had the moment where the music just took over, and you have this profound connection with the music that you can get on, acid, LSD, whatever. And that happened for me there, and it was like the music just saturated every cell in my body. And when you normally listen to music, you can hear the sound deep inside, but this was like deeper on a level that I didn't even know was possible. God, I don't know how to describe it. You guys probably know. So as I'm sitting there enjoying the sun, I look down and I see all these ants, and I had this moment of sadness, this thought where I was thinking, that's what I am. I'm just an ant, and my job in life is just to work, and survive and provide for my offspring and spouse, and then I die, and that's it. And my role on this earth is purely perfunctory. So that was kind of a bummer for me. I had this profound sense that was all there was, and there was no point to my existence, which super depressing. But kind of got over that, and then I had some more positive experiences. So I'm sitting here by the creek, and suddenly I realized that I'm having this physical sensation of just comfort, or actually a lack of discomfort. So I realized that for the first time in my life, there in that moment by the creek, was the first time in my life that I'd ever been physically super comfortable. This kind of background chatter of noise and tension that was like, in my central nervous system, this constant electricity had vanished. And I hadn't even realized that it had been there my whole life, and that I'd never had a moment without this background tension that I could just feel at a base level at all times. And that was really interesting. There's a level of comfort that you can get to just, laying on a bed or sitting in a chair that I didn't realize was possible because I'd never felt it. Really interesting to me, what was happening physically there. I also had a point where whatever the LSD was doing, it hit, I think, just like the area of my brain that is responsible for, sexual arousal. And so for like 10 minutes, I, from my fingertips to my toes to everywhere, I was just lit up, just generally sexually lit up. And I was like, oh God, this is, I've heard of people who go into, that they have these sort of like tantric sexual experiences. That must be what this is. That portion of my brain just must be on fire right now. So, that was fun. I wasn't really doing this for shits and giggles, but that was certainly interesting and enjoyable. So, and then one of my more interesting, I think, intellectual thoughts on the trip or experiences, and let me just set the groundwork for this a little bit. Coming from a background of tech and really following the works of Ray Kurzweil and being exposed to all of Elon Musk's fears about AI and all the speculation of, oh my God, we're going to create a super intelligence that is going to supplant human beings, and the technological singularity is 10 to 20 years away. I had really been thinking about that, and I was a huge believer that the technological singularity was coming. And I think I still am in a way, but if you have a material worldview and you believe that we are all just physical constructs and that intelligence is born out of the brain, then all you have to do is reverse engineer the brain, and you can build a mind with purely physical means, if that's where consciousness comes from. So operating on that assumption, it's reasonable, not even reasonable, but the data shows that we're on the curve coming up and that the technological singularity is near, and that pretty soon superintelligence will have arrived. It will either wipe us out or we will merge with it. And I was thinking, I had this opportunity almost to ask the universe, okay, what's going to happen with superintelligence? And I was holding that concept over here, and then there was an opposing concept, which is the second law of thermodynamics, if I remember that right, entropy, which basically states that all order in the universe eventually is going to descend into disorder, and the universe is going to end in heat death. And so you have this acceleration, this order that's arising out of intelligence as intelligence becomes more and more intelligent, and then the disorder on the other side. And I just wanted to ask the universe, who's going to win? Will the AI eventually, will sentience in the universe and this superintelligence, this God, eventually figure out how to reverse entropy and stop the universe from getting heat death, or hitting heat death? Is the universe going to end? How will it end? And I had this kind of suggestion. It wasn't that strong, but I had this suggestion from whatever, my subconscious, maybe the universe, who knows, that basically said the intelligence is going to win. So the universe won't die from, from heat death. And so that's kind of something that goes along with Asimov's The Last Question, I believe. If you've never read The Last Question by Asimov, you should. So that was pretty interesting. And then finally, as I'm laying there just feeling so great, I start to think about death. And it wasn't in a bad way at first. In fact, it was almost seductive to think about just melting into the ground and joining the universe and being done. And it sounded pleasurable in a really strange way. So as I'm thinking this, I'm like, okay, interesting. My vision starts to darken, and almost like I'm about to black out. And I have this thought, oh, it's my time. I'm going to die. And I'm surprised. I'm thinking, I'm young. I thought I had a lot more time. And today's the day, and now is the moment. And that made me kind of sad, but also, I guess, there was a small amount of acceptance. And then as things are getting darker and darker, I have this vision almost, and it is this vision of me being dead by the creek and the police finding me the next day after, I've been reported missing. And then I feel the pain from my family and my wife. I feel the sadness of, you get a call and we found your husband by the creek, he's dead. He took some drugs and died. And I'm just so regretful, but so sorrowful for my wife, and I can't imagine what she's gonna have to go through, and so I feel that pain, and I feel the pain on behalf of my children who have to grow up, without that biological father that loves them, and I feel like I took that from them. And suddenly, that was just super traumatic, and was the most significant moment of the whole experience. It was bad. Turns out I didn't die. But I was absolutely shaken and destabilized at my core, and it was not good. I managed to get home, but from that day onward, I was obsessed with death. And I think that my fear had been subconscious, like everyone else. I think everyone, to some degree, at some point in their life, they're afraid of death. They have to come to grips with the fact that they're going to die. And I'm no different. I would say that was my greatest fear, is, being gone forever. I don't want to go. So I really became fixated on this, and the more I became fixated on it, the more I felt just this overwhelming sense of despair and anger at the way things were. It's not fair. We come into the world, we have people that we love and we care about, and not only will they one day cease to exist forever, but so will we. And even if we could live forever, that would be awful too. So I started to kind of obsessively follow, the anti-aging movement and that kind of a thing. And, but, that was a half measure. Just because you can live longer, even if you could figure out how not to grow old, if you have a 0.001% chance of being hit by lightning, or whatever it is in a single day, and you wake up every day, eventually you're going to get hit by lightning. It's the law of numbers. It will catch up to you. We're all going to die. And I couldn't cope with this fact. So that's when I basically became dysfunctional, because I thought I'm going to lose everything in my life. And there's no security, there's no stability in this universe. I'm going to lose everyone I love. And that depression came on strong. I lost all that weight, and I could not get any comfort, and it's the most profound pain that I've ever felt. And I had those panic attacks that came on, and just this extreme existential crisis that was brought on. And so I'm fortunate that when I finally had to get help, and I went to a counselor, and they said, I told them everything. They said, you're probably suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, which had never occurred to me before, that you would get that from a psychedelic. But I think that's what it seemed like. I went on antidepressants, and antidepressants often get a bad rap, but they managed to stabilize me enough that I was able to heal. So, generally speaking, it was really, really bad. And every time you take a trip, you run the risk of having an experience like that. And, you build a lifetime creating this structure of, ideas in your mind, and your reality. And in a matter of moments, psychedelics can just completely shake your foundations and break it all down. And if you have an unhealthy mind, there's your opportunity to build something beautiful in its place. But it does have this potential. This actually ended up being very positive for me. It really did change my life, I think, and it sent me down this path of questioning everything that I believed. And I discovered a lot of things in the process. We can't know anything for sure in this world about the nature of reality itself and what happens when we die, and all of this. But I was surprised to find about 5 months after this experience, after really going through hell, that because I was forced into dealing with my deepest fears, and I could no longer look away from them, and I had no choice in the matter. LSD basically said, you're going to deal with your fear of dying. It's going to be in front of your face. That was painful, but it allowed me to heal in such a way that I am actually much better off than I was before. And so I think that my opinion now is that it's really important in society that everyone has the ability to have access to these chemicals and these experiences, but at the same time, they should be managed really, really carefully. And I look forward to a time where these can be used to help people. We have this, deaths of despair crisis, and suicides are on the rise, and depression is this horrible phenomenon that's taking over a large part of society. There's something wrong, there's something broken, and I think that psychedelics are the best tool that we have to possibly heal. So, at any rate, that's about it. I'm gonna talk a lot more about where this journey has taken me intellectually, what I've learned, and how my view of the world has changed, and stay on this journey of trying to make sense of the world and wake up, basically, to reality, I think. And so I'll discuss that more in future videos, but I wanted to document that for now. So if you watched, thank you so much.